Hi everyone, it's us, Tom and Linz. We're at Baltimore Penn Station in Maryland. If you've been following us, we've taken the Northeast Corridor at least from New York down to Baltimore. We took New Jersey Transit, SEPTA, Amtrak, and now for the last leg to DC, we're going to take MARC, the Maryland Area Rail Commuter. MARC is really cool, not only because of its unique trains, but also because of its unique speeds. It's one of the only commuter railroads in America that can go 125 miles an hour. Let's go buy our tickets and check out our train.
If you love train travel, hit that subscribe button. We upload at least once a week, and this way you won't miss any of our content. You can also join our community on Patreon. Your support gives you access to cool features such as early video releases. And finally, follow us on our social media, Instagram and TikTok. Tickets can be purchased immediately before boarding at the station ticket machines. Our trip today costs $9 for a 40-mile trip.
What do the tickets look like?
They're shiny.
Oh, those are pretty.
Our train to Washington DC is made up of multi-level cars today. I wanted to see the locomotive that would push our trains, but the conductors did not let me go back there and insisted that we board immediately. There are 3 railroad lines operated by MARC. Of those 3 lines, the Penn Line is by far the busiest, both in terms of ridership and in terms of train frequency. Now, Baltimore is the originating station for our train, but the MARC Penn Line actually does continue farther north towards Perryville, although service frequency north of Baltimore is significantly lower than south of Baltimore.
These trains are very similar to the New Jersey Transit ones, but it feels like the seats are a little bit more comfortable. Do you agree? So they check your tickets when you walk down the stairs and before you board the train. Which is smart. Unfortunately, the staff is incredibly rude.
The conductors had a belittling tone when they were answering passengers' questions. They also glared at everybody walking through the train, and their walkie-talkie was emitting a constant static noise that was just much louder than necessary. Overall, I understand that it was New Year's Eve when we shot this video, and they probably didn't want to be working, but at the same time, this really does negatively impact the passenger experience, especially for people who aren't as fond of trains as I am. Now let's list some of the positives of this train. First, the seat comfort. With the either leather or fake leather and armrests that these seats had, they were by far the most comfortable seats of any commuter rail we've reviewed in this recent series. They also provided adequate luggage space, as well as good wayfinding in case of an emergency. What I was really impressed with was that these emergency evacuation instructions had the instructions written on them in Braille as well. Way to go, MARC. MARC doesn't score all bonus points in terms of accessibility though, as there are still many stations on the network that are low-level platforms, meaning it's inaccessible to board for people in wheelchairs.
There's the light rail tracks.
Up there?
Soon after Baltimore Penn Station, our train enters the Baltimore and Potomac Tunnel. This tunnel dates back to 1873. This almost 150 years old tunnel is proving to be quite a problem for trains running on the Northeast Corridor. Because of a sharp curve and a steep incline, trains going towards Washington DC can only run through this tunnel at about 30 miles per hour. Add into that the fact that it's only 2 tracks, very tight, and significantly water damaged, and you can understand why Amtrak in Baltimore have made plans to replace this tunnel by 2032, hopefully. The first station after Baltimore, West Baltimore, demonstrates the low platform that I was talking about earlier. Not only is the platform lower than the train door, it's also super short. Really, it almost looks more like a bus stop than a station on America's fastest railroad line. The MARC Penn Line is actually the fastest commuter rail line in the United States. Trains can travel at speeds of up to 125 miles per hour or 200 kilometers per hour on this section of the line. The next stop is BWI Airport, which serves the Baltimore Airport, which is also used as an alternative airport to Washington DC. Now, this station is also used by Amtrak trains, so the platforms are at the same level as the train doors. Now, the Baltimore Light Rail might be more convenient in terms of reaching the terminal, but the MARC is probably faster and it connects to a shuttle bus leading straight to the airport terminal. I gotta say, riding commuter rail and going 125 miles per hour does feel good. Although the average speed of the train is probably much lower because we do slow down quite a bit in between stretches of going at high speed. Time to go for a quick walk through the train to show you what else this train has to offer, and to hopefully avoid the conductors on the way. So you can bring your bikes on MARC, and there's also room for storing luggage. These seats in the middle area by the doors kind of make it almost feel like a European train, although I imagine this would be a very loud place to sit. Now, the last car in our consist wasn't a bi-level car, but a single-level comic car with a bunch of bike racks so people can take their bike on the train. And behind that is our train's locomotive, which was a Siemens Charger locomotive. But I'll get to that in a little bit, because first we have to check out the bathroom. The first thing you'll notice about this bathroom is that it is very large. This is so people in wheelchairs can use it, which is points for accessibility, I guess. Everything seemed well stocked and in working order, even if the toilet was a little bit gross. Notice the Amtrak logo on the soap dispenser? That's because Amtrak is actually responsible for the operations of MARC train. New Carrollton is the last stop on both the MARC Penn Line and the Amtrak Northeast Corridor before Washington DC. It's also a transfer stop for the Washington Metro, and it's where the screen in our car decided to say something other than MARC. As the nation's capital was fast approaching, I wanted to quickly talk about the locomotives that MARC has. Our train was pushed by a Siemens Charger, a diesel locomotive. Yes, that's right, even though this entire line was electrified, we were pushed by a diesel locomotive, and MARC does that often. Although they do have electric locomotives, and I was secretly hoping that we would catch one of these, an HHP-8. Amtrak used to have these locomotives, but currently they are only in service with MARC. There is a rumor that Amtrak is going to be using their sets as non-powered control units on their Vermont trains, so maybe they'll be a more common sight than they are now. With MARC operating 2 diesel lines and only 1 electric line, I understand that having a diesel fleet would be more flexible. However, it still feels kind of wrong to be going 125 miles per hour on one of America's only electrified railway lines and still using diesel power. Aside from that and the unfriendly train staff, our MARC experience was great. It was a pretty quick trip from Baltimore to DC, and the trains were comfortable. $9 is a little bit pricey, but it's very comparable to the other commuter rail that we've been on. So, how was traveling from New York to DC via commuter rail? Well, our little cheating trip from Philadelphia to Baltimore proved to us that Amtrak is by far superior when it comes to onboard comfort. And it's also faster. So if you're going from New York to Washington DC, I definitely recommend taking Amtrak. You'll probably also be able to book a lower fare, especially if you book in advance. However, if you like trains, then I would recommend shaking it up and using commuter rail like we did. Also, if you're staying in the intermediate cities like we did when we spent a night in Philadelphia and then another night in Baltimore, all of a sudden commuter rail becomes a much more attractive option, not only because of price, but also because of flexibility. For an Amtrak train, you have to make a reservation, whereas for these commuter rail trains, we could just show up to the station when we wanted. Speaking of stations, this is Washington Union Station, the end of Amtrak's Northeast Corridor, and of our amazing trip down the East Coast of the United States. Thank you so much for watching this video today. Please leave a comment and a like if you like this video, and subscribe to Trains Are Awesome for future train content. We've already filmed a lot of great stuff for this summer, and we're excited to share it with you soon. See you next time.